Don't be nervous. They're going to love you, I promise, my fiancé David said, squeezing my hand before kissing it. I glanced over at him as he lowered our hands onto his lap. My heart felt full. Watching him sing along to the music in the car, I couldn't believe how lucky I was. Just last year, I had given up on love. No one seemed to meet my standards. Or maybe I was just unlovable. But none of that mattered anymore. I had found him. Sunlight streamed through the sunroof, lighting up his face before shadows from the tall pine trees covered him again. I couldn't take my eyes off him. He knew me so well, the good, the bad, all of it. And somehow it still felt right. I wanted to spend my life with him. Funny how feelings can change so fast. David never seemed off. Maybe I was too blinded by the way he showered me with love. Or maybe I just needed to feel wanted. He never argued, told me he loved me early on, and always agreed with me. If anything felt strange, it was only that everything seemed too perfect. I didn't have anyone to talk to about my doubts. My mom stopped caring about me long before I moved out at 18. Maybe she never cared at all. I had no siblings, never met my dad, and didn't have many friends. Maybe that's why he chose me. After hours on the road, we finally arrived at his family home. Stretching as I stepped out of the car, I took a deep breath. I looped my arm through David's as we approached the front door. Just before we could knock, it swung open. "Oh, hi, I'm so happy to meet you both. I'm Lacy," I said, smiling nervously. There was a brief pause, long enough to make me uncomfortable. Then, the woman in front of me broke into a wide smile and pulled me into a hug. It was too tight, too long. When she finally pulled away, she held onto my shoulders. "You are so beautiful," she said. "Mom, come on," David mumbled behind me, clearly embarrassed. "It's fine, David. I don't mind compliments," I replied with a grin, though I wasn't sure if I really did. "Don't mind her, Lacy. She doesn't know how to respect people's space." The tall man at the door chuckled. "I'm Pate. We're so glad you're here. We've heard so many great things about you." He nudged his wife, who was still staring at me. "Oh, sorry, dear. I must have zoned out," she said. "I'm Linda." "You're both totally fine. I feel like I already know you from everything David's told me," I said. "That's so sweet of you. We feel the same. Well, come in, come in." Linda gestured for us to enter. As I stepped inside, I felt something off. The house was huge, yet strangely suffocating. The family seemed happy to see me, but something about it felt forced. Maybe they had a fight before we arrived. I glanced at David. He looked tense too, but I figured he was just nervous about the introductions. The night passed without much excitement. Dinner, card games. Eventually, it got late, and they showed me to my room. David walked me there as his parents went to bed. "Thanks for understanding why we have to stay in separate rooms," he said, opening the creaky wooden door. "You know how my parents are." "Oh, it's no trouble," I whispered. I wouldn't want to make anyone uncomfortable. I leaned in for a kiss. David winced and pulled back. Sorry, I don't want to do that in front of them. It might be weird." I frowned slightly. "Sure, I guess that's okay." I wasn't surprised that we were in separate rooms. David's family had strong views about that sort of thing. We had slept next to each other before, but only for actual sleeping. David had been clear from the start. Nothing physical until marriage. Kissing was fine, but that was all. I never minded. In fact, I always thought it was kind of romantic. We said goodnight, and I went to check out my bed. Everything seemed normal, but I still couldn't shake that strange feeling from earlier. It wasn't as strong as before, but something felt off. The air was stuffy and the bedding was stiff. I kept shifting, trying to get comfortable. The house creaked so much that I couldn't tell if someone was walking around or if it was just an old house settling. Before I knew it, morning arrived. Sunlight streamed through the window, waking me up. Downstairs, I heard the sounds of breakfast being made. As I stepped out of my room and made my way to the stairs, I caught whispers, David's family quietly telling each other that I was awake. When I turned the corner into the kitchen, they were all sitting at the table smiling at me. A huge breakfast was spread out, more food than we could ever eat, like something out of a movie. "Oh wow, all of this for me? You didn't have to. I could have helped," I said with a laugh, my eyes widening at the giant stack of waffles. I sat down and started filling my plate. After a minute, I realized no one else was eating or talking. At first, I felt rude for not saying more. I wasn't much of a talker in the morning. But when I looked up, that uneasy feeling hit me again, stronger this time. They were all just smiling at me. Their grins were so wide, their lips almost trembled. Their hands rested in front of them, folded neatly on the table. "You guys okay? Please, eat," I said, trying to sound calm, but my voice gave me away. "We're just so happy to have you here, Lacy," Linda said, her smile never fading. "You are just so perfect." I nearly choked on my waffle. Calling me beautiful was one thing, but perfect? After knowing me for less than a day? "Lacy's right. Let's all eat together," David said quickly. His parents nodded and started serving themselves. The rest of the meal was awkward, with barely any talking. As soon as I was done eating, David insisted we go for a walk. We walked away from the house, and he let out a sigh. "I know my parents are acting weird, and honestly, I probably am too. I'm really sorry," he said. "They've been through a lot these last few years. They don't leave the house much, and they mostly just see me. I think they forget how to act around new people, and I guess I played along to make them feel comfortable." He rubbed the back of his neck, then put his arm around me. "It's all out of love, I promise." His words made some sense. Not enough to make me feel completely okay, but at least enough to stay. As we walked around the large 50-acre property, I noticed how self-sufficient David's family was. They had solar panels and crops, making it clear they didn't need to leave often. He showed me a small duck pond with 2 tire swings hanging from a tree. Then, as we neared the house again, I noticed 2 playhouses standing side by side. Thinking back, I realized I had seen a lot of things in pairs during our walk. "David, why do you have 2 swings by the pond?" "Oh, in case Mom or Dad wanted to swing with me," he said, scratching his neck. "Really? They looked pretty small," I said with a chuckle. "Yeah, I don't know. I guess they just squeezed in." "What about the playhouses? Why did you need 2? "Because I asked for 2, he replied, avoiding eye contact. You got me there," I laughed. I should have noticed how uncomfortable he was. Instead, I dismissed his odd behavior. I kept joking around, pretending everything was fine. When we got back to the house, David said he needed to talk to his parents alone. His parents, still wearing those big fake smiles, nodded and took him aside. I went to my room and closed the door. Curiosity got the best of me, so I pressed my ear against it to listen. I couldn't make out the words, but their voices sounded panicked. All 3 of them were whispering in a frantic tone. After about 10 minutes, David knocked on my door and told me everything was fine. When I walked back into the kitchen, everyone seemed more relaxed, but something felt off, like they were forcing themselves to act normal. The rest of the day was quiet. We ate, played some card games, and then, When it got dark, things got really strange. We sat down to play Clue. Linda insisted that I play as Miss Scarlet. I always chose Mr. Green, but she wouldn't let it go. That's just how we do things around here. So please pick Miss Scarlet, Linda said through clenched teeth. Why does it matter? I started to say, but she suddenly stood up, glaring at me. Okay, I said, grabbing the Miss Scarlet token. Yay! I love when you play Miss Scarlet. It makes me so happy, Linda said, grinning. My stomach twisted. What do you mean when I play Miss Scarlet? This is our first time playing together. David squeezed my knee under the table and shook his head slightly, warning me not to push it. The rest of the family acted like nothing had happened. But at that moment, I started to seriously question if I could stay another night. Later, Linda suggested we look at family photos. Pete seemed hesitant, but she insisted we all sat near the fireplace with hot chocolate and blankets. It should have been cozy, but I felt cold inside. My whole body told me to relax, but my gut screamed that something was wrong. I barely heard the stories they told. My mind was racing, trying to figure out how to leave. Then, something in the pictures caught my attention. Most were of David as a boy, playing outside, celebrating birthdays, posing in front of the house. But some photos looked strange. They were uneven, like someone had cut them with scissors. David was often standing off to one side, with a missing space next to him. I started asking questions, hoping someone would slip up. But when Linda pulled out a particular photo, her eyes went wide, and she quickly stuffed it in her pocket. I think that's enough for tonight. It's late, she said, standing up suddenly and heading to her room. I looked at Pete, but he just rolled his eyes. David shrugged. Back in my room, I pulled David inside. What was that photo? Why did it freak her out so much? I asked. Probably my dad's ex-girlfriend. Sometimes old photos of her end up in the mix, he said casually. That doesn't make sense. It's fine. Haven't you noticed? They're weird. He laughed. I took a deep breath. David, I want to leave tonight. He frowned. I get it, but can we just wait until morning? It'll be easier. I hated that answer, but like an idiot, I agreed. As I went downstairs for a drink, I passed the master bedroom and saw Linda's pants on the floor. The photo had to be in there. I knew it was a terrible idea, but I stepped inside. The floor creaked. I froze. Pete stirred in bed. I grabbed the pants and rushed into the bathroom, locking the door. My hand shook as I pulled out the photo. It was face down. I heard footsteps outside. They were looking for me. Holding my breath, I turned the photo over. My heart stopped. It was a picture of me. As a child, I didn't recognize the photo. I had never given them one. And then I noticed the background. The pond. Their pond. I had been here before. My breath hitched. I reached for my phone, but my pockets were empty. Bathroom. I heard someone whisper outside. I stayed completely still. The doorknob rattled. Linda cleared her throat. Lacy, sweetheart, are you okay? Please, I want to go home, I begged. I don't know what's going on, but I want to leave. Lacy, you don't understand, David said softly. His voice was right outside the door. Like hell, I don't. You can't leave, he whispered. You belong here now. You're part of the family. No, I choked out. Lacy, open the door, Pete commanded. Why would I do that? If you don't, we'll come in, he said calmly. Silence. Then, bang, a sledgehammer smashed through the door. Pete's thick arm reached through, unlocking it from the inside. The door burst open. David, Linda, and Pete stood there, staring at me. Their eyes were full of sadness, but their fists were clenched with anger. Pete stepped forward, raising the sledgehammer. I backed into the bathtub. My whole life flashed before my eyes. This was it. I was going to die. I thought about how I would never know my father, how my relationship with my mother was broken, and how I would never have the life I dreamed of. I asked myself what I had done to deserve this. Why me? Why David? Why? As I prepared for the end, a tear slid down my face and I heard David's voice. "Dad, what are you doing? Stop, this is all for nothing." He ran toward me and knocked Pete into the wall. "You promised this wouldn't happen again." Pete pulled himself out of the broken wall, pushing David off. "Are you serious? It wasn't my fault." "Stop denying it," David shouted. "She fell because you pushed her." "No, it was your mom who killed her," Pete argued. "She knew Abby was drunk. She could barely walk. Why would she ask Abby to go downstairs for something? And she hit her head on the way down." "Enough, Pete," Linda said, her hands on her face. "We're supposed to be on the same side. Stop pretending David didn't throw her down the steps after she was already dead to cover up the murder. I know she was already dead. I know you killed her. I know it. Who is Abby? What did you do?" I whimpered. Linda left the room, and the two men blocked the door. Soon, Linda came back with a cloth in her hand. As David got close, I wanted to fight, but I couldn't. I couldn't hurt him, even though everything felt wrong. David grabbed my arms and held them behind my back, while Linda walked up with the cloth soaked in chloroform. I fought to stay awake, locking eyes with David. "It's okay," he whispered softly as I fell unconscious. When I woke up, everything was blurry. I rubbed my eyes, hoping to see my familiar room at home, my Pulp Fiction poster, my green blanket, but when my vision cleared, I saw a strange room. It had pink walls with big flowers, covered with vinyl records and band posters. It looked like a little girl's room, but also like someone who wanted to grow up too fast. Then I saw the name on the wall, Abby. My heart dropped. I was in a strange bed, wearing pajamas I didn't recognize. I couldn't stop thinking about how someone must have changed my clothes while I was unconscious. Music and laughter started to fill the air. I walked quietly to the door and pressed my ear against it. There was dancing, talking, people enjoying themselves. I looked around, trying to figure out a way out. The window was locked, and I didn't want to risk breaking it in case the consequences were worse. I quietly opened the door and tiptoed to my old room, but nothing was there. My phone and my things were all gone. I felt hopeless. I didn't know what to do. The only idea I had was to run. I took a few deep breaths and sprinted toward the front door. The house was isolated, miles away from anywhere, but I had to try. I reached the door, turned the knob, but it was locked. I looked up at the family who was standing nearby, their faces full of concern. "Abby, don't you want some breakfast?" Linda asked, holding a plate. "Why are you calling me Abby?" I panicked. "Oh, come on, Abby, come have some breakfast," Pete said with a smile. I looked around. All the doors and windows had large locks. I was trapped. In a moment of desperation, I grabbed a rolling pin and threw it at the glass door. It bounced off, making a funny sound. The family didn't look angry, just more worried. Before I could react, David ran over and tied my hands behind my back with a twist tie. Then he sat me down at the table to eat with them, making sure I couldn't move. They acted like everything was normal. After they ate, Linda brought out a scrapbook and started flipping through the pages. She showed me pictures from the night before, but this time, the missing parts of the pictures were filled in. I was in those missing parts. "Can someone please just tell me what is going on?" I begged. "Who is Abby and why am I in all these pictures?" The family exchanged glances and then David spoke. "Listen, Abby, I know you've been gone for a while and I know it's hard to adjust, but we're here for you. I'm just so happy to have my sister back." "My sister? What?" I yelled, "This is crazy! You're sick!" I struggled in the chair, but I couldn't get free. I eventually collapsed on the floor, exhausted. David came over and sat in front of me. "This is what you wanted." "No, it's not. I never wanted this," I whispered. "A family." "You wanted a family. You never had one, and I knew you needed it. We lost someone, and you needed to find a new one. I wanted a family, yes, but not like this. I wanted a life with you, not as my brother. Please let me go." I begged. "You can't deny it," David said. "You're the image of Abby. You might as well be her." "You killed her, didn't you?" I asked, staring at him. "I didn't kill anyone. You're right here, Abby. We missed you so much when you were gone." After hours of being tied up, they finally untied me. I sat still and smiled at them, pretending everything was fine, hoping they'd let their guard down. "It's nice to be home," I said. David smiled. "We're so happy to have you home." The family went to their rooms and I went to mine, Abby's room. I found a phone on the nightstand. It didn't have a password, so I opened it. It was Abby's phone, not mine. I tried calling 911, but the line just rang and rang. I couldn't remember anyone's number. I'm stuck here hundreds of miles away from home with no one coming to look for me. These people are trying to gaslight me into believing I'm someone I'm not. They want me to be their lost daughter. I'm posting this because I don't know who else to turn to. I'm going to lay low for now. Maybe try to earn some trust so I can escape. But if anyone sees this, please know I'm trying. This isn't what I had in mind when David asked me to spend my life with him.